details, right, all your description, just walks you through it. And I recommend having 3 weeks notice if you're going to do something like this. Any questions on these sorts of platforms so far? All right. This is the idea. And this is for salsa dancing because there just wasn't as much stuff on square dancing. But when people, this is just the search engine results page on Google if you search for square dancing in Walnut Creek. And there's tons of stuff. Salsa. What did I say?
Square.
Why? I'm sorry. Yeah, salsa dancing. I'm sorry. Look at that. The conversion has begun.
Yeah.
This is crazy. Square them up. You want there to be a ton of listings, right? People search for stuff you can populate. You can get stuff out there, like blog posts or things on the Craigslist calendar. Craigslist ranks really well on Google, and a lot of other places where you can put the Chamber of Commerce quite often have websites that rank well on Google as well. All right, this is one of the important ones. How many of you here are familiar with Meetup? Okay, so the vast majority are not. I'm going to plead with you, okay? Write it down. If you don't know about it, Meetup is a gold mine. And for those of you who don't know, Meetup is an online platform that's designed to help people organize offline events. Let me say that again. It's an online platform that helps people organize offline events. Right? Your square dance classes and lessons are offline events. Okay? This is the perfect bridge from technology to the real world. And it works like a charm. And I'll prove it to you. I've had personal experience with this. Years ago, when I first started getting into speaking and such, I joined the Toastmasters Club. And anyone here ever been a member of Toastmasters? Okay, just a few actually. Toastmasters is a pretty interesting organization, and maybe I'll attempt to almost get back to it later. But let me say this right now. Rotary clubs are dying on the vine. They're not attracting any young people. And the average age of a Rotarian gets almost a year older every year. What does that mean? It means that almost no one new is joining, right? Kiwanis clubs are dying. Lions clubs are dying, right? Square dancing, I'm not going to say the word, okay? They're struggling, okay? Toastmasters continues to grow. And I'll tell you why in a second, because I've got a slide that relates directly to it. But it's it's awesome. But we'll get back to it. So I was a member of a Toastmasters club, and I was on Meetup because I had another group. And when you join as an organizer, you can have as many as 3 groups. So I had an open slot. So I created one for my Toastmasters club, and I didn't put Toastmasters in the title because people who are searching for Toastmasters are going to find Toastmasters website, and we're on there too. So I didn't need to say Toastmasters. So what did I call it? I called it La Miranda Public Speaking. Okay. And I had other keywords in the description that were about motivational speaking and speaker. People are searching for public speaking, right? So I've already got the Toastmaster covered by the Toastmasters.org website. We're on that website already. So I wanted to get public speaking and other keywords. And La Miranda is the community where this club is based. So I called it La Miranda Public Speaking. Okay. This thing, I've got to tell you, most Toastmasters, it was crazy. Like I went through the whole ranks. So I was like the VP Education and VP Communications, and then I was president, and then I was the area governor. So for a number of years, I was very active in Toastmasters, and the whole time I had this meeting. Now when I started, we were kind of an average club. Now I am not taking 100% credit for what changed. Okay, there's a lot of different factors that were a part of it. But by the end of, and still today, this club is like the 2nd or 3rd biggest in the district. It's got younger people, it's vibrant, there's tons of people who get to it, and the single biggest source of new members is Meetup. Okay, people just consistently, they're looking for things on Meetup. See here's the homepage. And again, for people who aren't familiar with it, there's find a Meetup, start a Meetup. Those are the 2 options. And when you find a Meetup, you put something like, no one's going to put square dancing, or not many, but people are going to put dancing, right? And you're going to come up on that. Okay, this is the one that I had. Now look at this. consumers who reach, this is a commerce-related statistic, but consumers who receive emails spend 83% more and order 28% more often. When you're a member of a meetup, you get emails of the events that are coming up. So on my meetup for my Toastmasters Club, I put it on a recurring thing, so I don't have to do anything. It happens every Tuesday. There's an event scheduled for the Toastmasters meeting that evening, and everyone who's a member at that point in time gets an email saying, hey, there's a meetup tomorrow evening, Reno public speaking. Okay, so people get emails, and statistically, when people get emails, you're staying in front of them. Right? They have a higher propensity. Does this make sense? I know this stuff's a little boring, but there's a momentum that you can build, right, with this kind of stuff. I searched for dance. Okay? See, I searched for dance up in the thing. And these are all dance-related meetups in the San Francisco Bay Area. Actually, it was like Walnut Creek is like 20 miles east. But anyway, the point is that people go to meetup and they search for dance, they search for dancing, they search for dancing lessons. If you had something on there, I promise you, it costs like $72, $12 a month, so $72 is 6 months. So it's $12 a month. And if you have one up there, maybe you guys get together every Thursday evening for a dance or whatever it might be, you can put it on there recurring. And I promise you're going to get some people because I've lived through that myself. Okay?
We did it. We got a couple in our class how to meet up.
So do you actually have a meetup?
We have a meetup, and we have a couple in our beginner class from meetup.
Okay, so this, just let me ask you a couple of questions. He says he has a meetup for his beginner class. How long have you had it?
Sorry. To repeat, we did use Meetup, and we have one couple that came out of Meetup, and they're in our class right now.
And how long have you been on Meetup?
We just got on Meetup like less than a month before we started the class.
Okay, so less than a month we got 2 people coming. And since then, have you had some more, or is this all very recent?
No, because we haven't started our next class yet.
Okay, so this is brand new, and you've already got 2 people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I was going to say, I've used Meetup before. I used it for about 1.5 years. The only problem that I had is that we don't start classes often enough. So if we start classes, we did it 3 times a year. A lot of groups don't even do it that often. To pay the $12 a month when you're not able to draw, that was kind of hard. We had up to 190 people signed up that was getting our emails.
Wow.
The other problem that we kind of had was that every time we had a beginner dance where we had a free dance, we would get 20, 30 people. They wouldn't necessarily translate into taking the lessons. And so we would see the same 20, 30 people. They would bring new people with them, but then it didn't translate into what we needed as a club. So that was one of the downsides. But yeah, it definitely gets the promotion out there.
So he makes 2 very good, thank you very much. He makes 2 very good points. The first is that if you're only holding events 3 times a year, it's not going to be worth the money. That's a legitimate. I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't even think about that as a possibility. I assumed that this would happen more regularly than that. But fair enough. I mean, if you're only doing this 3 times a year, then maybe that's not something that you need to take a look at. But secondly, he related to this idea that a bunch of people come for the first lesson, and then they just they disappear. And that's an entirely separate issue. I've got a thought on that, and it's just like 5 minutes from now. We'll get into it 10 minutes from now. But it's not. I don't know how to change that. Okay, I'm not gonna. I'm not a genie. I can't think of like the perfect thing that's going to solve that problem. But I have something that might help, and we'll get there in just a few seconds. But let me show you first on Meetup. They did a number of studies, and again, that's the kind of stuff that I get really passionate about. So event descriptions with 400 plus words get twice the attendance. It's very, very interesting. So if you do use Meetup, it's the same thing with YouTube. Don't just put a couple of sentences, put a big one, just tell them everything. Right? And the idea is, this is, in the internet, they always refer to this the same way. They say, long copy wins. Long copy wins. Right? Long, tons of description consistently outperforms short descriptions. And the idea, what actually ends up happening is, just hear me out on this. The people who are interested, let me go the other way. The people who aren't interested. They're not going to read it. We all know that. But the people who are interested will read as much as you give them. they'll read as much as you give them. Because think about it, they're doing this search at 11 o'clock at night in their spare bedroom before they go to bed at night. This is when people do these sorts of searches, right? And you have a big long description that says, here's when we're going to get started, and we tend to have 10 tips. You see that, guys? Boom, right there. Tips. Right, who knew? And here's what people normally wear, and we're going to have a collar, and the collar's name is this, and here's that person's background, and if you want to wear this other stuff, you can, and if you're not, then that's okay. And we usually have some food available, but it goes quickly, so get early if you want some. And you just go on and on and on and on and on and on, and people, it's crazy. When I used to do events on Meetup, and I have done a lot, not recently, but I used to put these, you would just go on and on about every detail about what we're going to do. And parking is at the back of the building, and there's a door right there, and you don't have to come around in front. Just crazy, just endless, right? The description, and it increases attendance. Statistically, that's a fact. Okay? These are just little tips, again, improving everything a tiny bit. Chew on this one. Leaders hate structure, but followers love it. Chew on that for a second. We are all leaders and followers in different areas of our lives. You go to church, you're a follower. In your family, you're a leader. At work, you might be a leader and a follower. Okay? So this is no judgment. We're all leaders and followers. Okay? But think of a role where you're a leader. In that role, people don't like rules and regulations. They're like, I know how to do this. I'm the leader. Don't tell me what to do. Leaders hate structure. The followers love it. Give them the more structure you can give them, the more they will like it. You're buying the risk out. It's the same thing with a 500-word description of your event. You're buying the risk out. You're like, they can picture it. You start putting a picture in their mind of, yeah, the parking lot's in the back, and there's a door, and they can picture the whole thing, even though they haven't even been there, and there's water available, and all this ridiculous stuff. But it buys the risk out. They start to get that picture in their mind, and they're getting more and more comfortable with it. The same thing with structure. Do things, and here's where I was going to come back to the Toastmasters, because Toastmasters is a classic example of an organization. That's why they're growing. They have huge structure, like crazy structure. And those of you who have been a member or know someone who's been a member, you know about that structure. Like if you want to become a competent communicator, there's like 10 speeches that you have to give, and each one has a purpose and a role and a whole description on how to do it. And you can become like a VP of education, but if you do that, you have to do these other things. And it's an extraordinary amount of structure, and people thrive on that. Right? People want accomplishment. They want progress in their lives. In fact, there's this whole science of happiness, which is something that I'm super passionate about personally. And they say that people who are happy tend to have 4 things in their lives. I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but a sense of perceived control. People want a sense of perceived and control to be happy. Okay? A sense of perceived progress. That's what we're talking about right here. When you provide structure, they feel like they're progressing towards something. Like the lessons that you have. We'll talk about what you can do there to give them more structure. Okay? And then the third one is relationships and connection. People need relationships and connection. That's a huge thing in dance. Okay? And then the fourth thing is purpose. People want to be part of something greater than themselves. Those are the 4 primary things. But progress is a big part of it, and Toastmasters provides this. Okay? So here's what I was referring to earlier. And I don't know if it's going to land. If it doesn't land, it's cool. Okay? But I got to tell you kind of how this played out for me, because it was pretty wild. So I started taking salsa lessons, and I went to these classes, not private lessons. The private lessons is very new for me. But I started going to salsa classes in year 2000, which was when I moved to the Bay Area. And they teach you these patterns. So every class they teach you a pattern. And anyone here dance salsa? Just out of curiosity.
A little bit.
Okay, not really. Okay. A little bit, that's fine. But these patterns can be quite complicated. And at the time you learn it, you remember how it goes, and then you can do it a few times, but then you go home and the next day you've forgotten it already. Okay? It used to drive me crazy. So I came up with this whole notation system for how to write down what I had learned. okay? And it looked like this, okay? So it had, because the step is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. And then the basic step is F, forward, I, in place together, back in place together, forward in place together. This is her right hand, her left hand. So I had a whole notation, and I would literally write down. So we'd learn the pattern, and then in the break, in between lesson 1 and lesson 2, I would go to the side, and I would write it down in my clipboard, and record the whole thing. Okay, and so what ended up happening is it looked like this by the time I was finished. Okay, I mean, I would go back home and put it into the computer. So, and if you can't read all this, it's fine. It's just all the description of all the stuff that happened for me to remember the pattern. Okay, so when I was at the lessons, a couple things happened. Okay, first of all, after a few months, I had like this database basically of these patterns, but they all just looked like blocks of text like this. And you couldn't distinguish one from the other just to look at it quickly. So like you had to read through it to remind yourself which pattern this one was, right? And so it became impractical. So I came to the point where I was like, I have to give these patterns names. And these patterns didn't have names, okay? And you were telling me that as a caller, the flow modules. Okay, so he referred, is that common or is that your term?
It's common.
So flow modules, okay? A pattern is a flow module, okay? So I had to give these flow modules names, okay? The individual components was like, in my case, was like a crossbody lead, an inside turn, whatever it was, okay? But the point was the accumulation of these into one pattern, I had to give it a name. So I had this list of all these crazy names that I had from something entirely unrelated much earlier, but I thought it was perfect. So I came up with these names, like this one was, I called it the Urban Grasshopper. And then I had the Slippery Mouse and the Bobbing Thomas and the Two-Headed Crab and all these bizarre names. And they were random. I just pulled, I just gave them these names. So I would take these classes and then I would sit down in the break in between and I'd be frantically writing down what I had learned, and other guides would come up to me, like, what are you doing? And I'd be like, well, I write this down so I don't forget them. And they're like, oh man, that's awesome. Can you give me a copy, right? And so every week I started bringing extras, like printed, of all the ones I had at that point, and I started handing them out. Well, this thing really got crazy. And people started, like when I was at a club or something, people would come up to me and be like, oh dude, I was doing the Urban Grasshopper with this girl. And they were referring to these patterns that I named. Like no one named those names except for me. And they started to get known, okay? And so there was a couple that were teaching salsa, Juan and Ruth, right? It doesn't matter who they were. And they were, I knew Ruth from a group. And anyway, so I ended up working with them a little bit. This is years ago. And they don't do this anymore because now things are really going well for them. And I don't know why they discontinued it. But anyway, they were struggling at the time. They weren't getting a lot of people going to their lessons, or the people would come to the first couple lessons and then drop off. Wow, this sounds familiar. Last night they told me about this situation in your world, and I immediately thought of Ruth. And so I just built these slides literally this morning.
Wow.
So I told Ruth and Juan that they should put a program. See, here's the challenge in salsa dancing. I want to know enough patterns to be able to do unique things with the girl and not repeat any move for one entire song. That's the goal for me and for many guys. Because there's all these crazy patterns. I just want to be able to get through one song without repeating. Because then when you're a newbie, all you do is you just do an outside turn, another outside turn, another outside turn. The girl's totally bored in 2 minutes, right? So if you want to, if you don't want to look like a chump, you got to have enough patterns to keep her entertained for 7 minutes. Okay? That's just, I mean, for the women in the room, that's just what it is. It is what it is, and it's I'm the caller in that scenario, right? So I want to keep her entertained. And I told Ruth this, and I was like, what you need to do is create a structured lesson 8 lessons, okay, where the promise of it is, by the end, you'll be able to do a full song without repeating anything, okay? And so I told her, you ought to give them these crazy names, right? So I had week 1, the two-headed crab, the slippery mouse, the urban grasshopper, the Bob and Thomas, the elevator sling, spicy clam, the rolling alligator, the screaming rabbit. The names made it work. Right? The names made it work, guys, because the people were like, they saw the program when they came there on day 1. They got this program that said that in week 5 they're going to learn the elevator sling. Right? And they were like, what the heck is the elevator sling? And then this whole thing with the underlying promise that by the end of the course they're going to be able to go through an entire dance without repeating it.
In the heat of battle, when you're out on the floor and you are dancing with the lady, don't you have to, I mean, look, you've got these 8 things that are going to keep you from having to repeat what you're doing. Don't you have to have that on a wristband, like a quarterback has in the huddle, in order for you to pull that off?
I mean, you know, yeah, at the beginning. But seriously, I mean, look, you know, I'm not in your world. I don't know, you know, but it worked like a charm, guys. It worked so well for them. And they had this package, they had this literature, and nobody else had it, right? Nobody else had it. Here's the thing. Most people think that the opposite of happiness is sadness. I totally disagree. I think the opposite of happiness is boredom. People are bored. They're bored. People live in a boredom trance every day of their lives doing the exact same thing. And it's almost involuntary because our world perpetuates it. Television perpetuates it. Everything that goes on in our world perpetuates this psychotic zombie, you know, lifestyle. And I get really, you know, kind of heated about this because you just let your whole life just trickles past. You don't even notice it's happening. But if you want to get people engaged, you got to keep it fun, right? And those names were fun. The urban grasshopper was fun. I mean, it was silly. It was absurd. It didn't mean anything. But it appealed to the young people. And there was this whole thing for, like, what happened with me in salsa, I took lessons for like 2.5 years, and then I basically dropped off the map for 8 years. And I for a whole bunch of reasons, it doesn't matter, but I just stopped going. And then I started going again about 3 years ago. And now it's a bigger part of my life today. So I don't really know what happened in the middle there. But there was a time when literally people would come up and be like, oh, I was doing the two-headed crab with this girl and this happened and that happened. I was like, this is incredible. Like they wanted to say two-headed crab because everyone was like, what's a two-headed crab? Right? And they had something that they could say. They knew more than the other person. Right? And they say, oh, well, the two-headed crab is when you do a hammerlock left and a hammerlock right. You know, that's a two-headed crab. Who cares? Right? And having the program with the promise that by the end, you know, you guys get it. Yes?
Okay, I have something that you just hit upon. After 8 years, you came back. What made you come back to something you knew before?
Yeah, I mean, this happens. You gotta dive into my personal life.
We have that situation.
You feel threatened?
We have a lot of people that have dropped out that we would like to get back, and we want to know what would bring them back. Maybe you have a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, like, you know, awesome story behind this or anything, but there was one group of friends that I was kind of a part of, and I just kind of, they just were really, I feel like I'm being judgmental. I have a little, you know, some people live in the deep end of the pool, some people live in the shallow end of the pool, okay? And the interesting thing is that the people who live in the shallow end of the pool think they're in the deep end. And it's not true, but it's all they've ever known. And to get a shallow person into the deep end is almost impossible. It's like describing air to a fish. They have no idea what you're talking about. So, my life is, I have a good life, but I've also had some struggles in my life, and I think it's left me with some depth in character that some people don't have, and that's fine. They make great salespeople, they make great CEOs, they do very well in life. They're just not the sorts of people that I can be friends with. So I kind of walked away from that friendship group. And they were into salsa. And so I just kind of, by default, I also moved, which contributed to it. A whole bunch of reasons I kind of left. But the whole time I knew that I loved it. I really loved it. And I was good at it. And that is not to say that I'm an advanced dancer, okay? And I'm not. I don't pretend to be. But I have an aptitude where, like, the structure of it, the whole, like, to me it was mathematics. Like, the whole thing, I could just, I could do it. Like, even in the lessons, they would teach a pattern, and they have a big circle, and they do a tiny part of the pattern, and then everyone rotates one, and then they build on it, and everyone rotates one, and that's how they do it in salsa, in these classes. So you go to a class, and you might end up dancing with 30 women during the class, because you're constantly rotating. And so I got feedback from all these different women, and again, I wasn't, these are basic patterns for the most part, but people consistently said that the way I led them through the move, it was clean and easy for them to follow. So I had this in my mind that I can do this. This is something that I can do. So, at the end of the day, what brought me back, it was just me kicking my own ass and saying, you got to get back to doing this stuff. I don't have it. I don't have some great answer to this. But I'll tell you one thing, and no joke, if I had a steady stream of content in front of me on Facebook or anywhere else of other people having fun salsa dancing, I probably would have come back earlier. But I didn't have that. I didn't have these pictures. It's like Phyllis. If Phyllis had pictures of people square dancing that she sees because two of her friends go square dancing all the time, and so every Thursday night she sees these photos of her friends having fun while she was at home alone, she would go. Is staying in front of them, And I didn't have that. I love it when I make jokes, I don't even realize it. But listen, you guys, we got 25 minutes, and I know we've been sitting here a long time. We'll probably bunch you up to use the restroom. But let's hustle through the end of this. The one tomorrow I think is going to be fun. It's going to add to this in a way that might complement. But I had to divide it. I can't repeat everything I'm going to say tomorrow because you guys aren't going to come. So there's more stuff tomorrow, some great stories tomorrow, maybe a bit more humor tomorrow. I think I can get some laughs out of you guys. But for now, let's keep hustling. The one tomorrow is 9:30 to 10:30. Yeah, and tomorrow I finish at 10:30, and I got to catch the shuttle at 11, and my flight leaves at 12:20. I'm going to Orlando. So tomorrow's a really tight schedule for me. But I'm really looking forward to that hour, and it's going to be a big crowd, and I think we'll have some fun. I really hope that you guys come for that. But can we keep finish this sucker up? All right. This is the law of diffusion of innovation. It's the law of diffusion of anything. You guys have seen this a million times, or at least heard about it in your life. You've got your innovators, your early adopters. You've got early majority, late majority, and these are the laggards. These people, the only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is rotary phones aren't available. So, and look, this room is big enough. Some of you are laggards. Okay, let's all be real and honest with ourselves, right? Some of us are laggards. We don't like, who doesn't like change? You don't put up your hands. Some people don't like change. Okay, and that's fine. But just having an awareness of that is the beginning of maybe a small shift in behavior. Okay? Just an awareness alone. A lot of times what I say, don't make the change. Just cultivate awareness. Cultivating awareness alone will lead to the change. But the tipping point, what people refer to as the tipping point, is right there. If you can get to 16 to 18%, the spread will happen on its own. This happens in anything. It can happen in your family, in your church, in your work, in your group of friends, or in your dance community. If you can get 20% of the people doing something, or 18, or 16, okay? If you can get to that point, the rest will start to come, because some people are never going to come until someone else does it first. Right? So who's going to do it first? You got to get those first people. Right? And once you get those first people, those innovators, those people who are willing to take the risk, then other people come. It's a magic number. Getting to that 16 to 18% is magic. Right? That's when things really start. That's when momentum comes. Okay. All right. I want to talk a little bit about social media. the dreaded social media. So what is social media? Let me just quickly tell you. People throw around these terms, and I know it can be confusing. So 15 years ago, the internet's just brand new. Website speaks to website visitors, and that's it. That's essentially Web 1.0. Okay? So what's Web 2.0? Okay? Website speaks to website visitors and allows website visitors to speak back to the website. Okay? User-generated content. Okay, that's Web 2.0. People can upload their own content, bulletin boards, and all kinds of stuff. Okay? So what's social media? Website speaks to website visitors, allows website visitors to speak back to the website, and facilitates conversation between the users. Okay? That's what social media is. It's a linear progression. Social media is any website that allows the visitors to talk to each other. Facebook, YouTube, Meetup, all these websites, users communicate with users. It's a direct thing. Okay? Now, let's just look, by the way, who's better at social media, men or women?
Women.
Bingo, women. Men shout. Women interact. Okay? I'm guilty. I'm a man. I shout. I just put content out. Women interact. Social media is all about interaction. Right? If you want to get this to work, if you want to do some stuff on social media, I recommend getting your wife to help. Okay? Or, who's better at social media, older folks or younger folks?
Younger folks.
Younger folks. So if you can get a female whose age starts with a 2, that's a great start.
Listen also.
Has to be a 2-digit number. Yeah.
So far.
All right. There's 2 relationships that there's only one slide that is important, okay? Marketing 101. Awareness leads to interaction. Awareness leads to interest. Interest leads to demand. Right? That's marketing 101. Okay? There's another relationship online. Okay? Interaction leads to trust, and a trust is an essential precursor to the purchase decision. Okay? So again, you have this relationship. Interaction comes first. That leads to trust. That leads to buyers. Who's a buyer in our context? People who come. Right? People who come. They show up. Right? They buy. So, and this is consistent throughout social media. The big companies are screwing this up as much as anybody else. Everybody focuses on demand and purchase, and it's the wrong place to focus. Buy our stuff. Here's a discount. Pitch, pitch, pitch. Okay? All you need to do is focus on awareness and interaction. You'll get the others for free. Just worry about interaction and awareness. Right? Get content in front and get interaction. So let's look at just one thing for interaction. We're going to do a little more on this tomorrow. Okay? But this is a good place to start. Now, I know you can't read this, but this is the company is Performance Bike. This is a bicycle group. I just spoke to the IBD Summit 3 days ago in Monterey, which is the Independent Bike Dealers Association. So I had a lot of content involved in that. So they had this post on Facebook, and at the end it says, "Do you remember your last road ride?" Question mark, and a great image. Okay? Here's another one. "Are you ready to find some good roads this weekend?" Question mark, and a great image. Okay? Here's one more. "When was the last time it happened to you?" Question mark, and a great image. Okay? Turns out, Facebook posts that end in a question mark get twice as many comments as ones that don't. I mean, this stuff is so straightforward. It's making tiny adjustments. Right? So you post something on Facebook with a great image, and I say put a quote on the image, like "dance is cheaper than therapy," right? And then in the thing that you write, end it with a question. What are your thoughts? What have we missed? Have you come recently? What's your favorite call? Do you know C2? Interaction, right? If they interact, they comment. What happens when people comment? They're saying yes. They're saying I'm still interested. They're saying I want to know what's behind door number 2. Right? Interaction. Get people to interact with you online. Right? Ask a question. Little things can make a huge difference. So what's in the center of your online identity? It's your blog. Who here just hates the word blog? Oh, 3 people. Come on. Yeah, all right, you don't have this cool. Maybe.
Some of us don't know what a blog is, okay?
All right, so it's important. What's a blog? It was essentially the question. Here's the important thing. What's the difference between a website and a blog? Okay? A website is static. Okay? A blog has what's called an RSS feed, and if you don't know what that is, it doesn't matter. What it allows me to do is it allows me to subscribe to the blog. So if you have a blog and I subscribe to it and you post something on your blog, I don't have to visit your blog to see what you posted. It can get pushed to me electronically. Okay? Now, I know you're not going to start a blog and have 10,000 subscribers. And I know that's not going to happen. Okay? But think past the obvious, right? Your Facebook profile can subscribe to your blog. Your Facebook page can subscribe to your blog. Your Twitter profile can subscribe to your blog. Your LinkedIn profile can subscribe to your blog. So what does that mean? That means you can put something in your blog and click publish, and it just goes out automatically to all those other websites. Right? So what you end up with is something that looks more like this. Right? Where your content is on Facebook and it's on Twitter and it's on YouTube and it's on wherever else you want to put it, and people find it there because that's where they're spending time, and if they're interested, they come back to your blog afterwards. Right? Your blog is where you post this stuff. You don't have to start a blog, but I have to cover it because it's so important. Tomorrow we're not even going to talk about blogs, okay? But I have to spend just a few minutes and give you some background because, guys, it's a cornerstone of what's going on today, right? The reason blogs are so popular is because it allows for syndicated content. You can put content in one place and fan it out automatically. All these websites communicate with each other. Right? So what you end up with, like, let's say you're super busy, right? Most of us are busy. So just as an example, I'm not saying you have to do this, but as an example, you could write one blog post, okay? And because you've got all these websites connected, you don't have to do it once, right? Set it up once and then it's done, okay? And then the posts automatically go to Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. It just happens without you doing anything. You can take the post and publish it as an article in literally thousands of article directories if you wanted to do that. You could record the article, you could read it into a microphone and post it on iTunes. Now you have a podcast. And of course, you just wrote it so you know something about this. You could create a video and post it on YouTube. I'm not saying you're going to do this, but if you did, you would have a huge online identity. Like, you would be everywhere, and it wouldn't actually be that hard. There's a lot of people think they have to write like 3 blog posts a week or something crazy. Don't worry about it. Just create something once every 2 weeks, and then put it in different places. Just get it out there. This is my blog. I get over 50% of my business from my website.
Would it be possible to have a blog that related to the square dance class that you're teaching for 8 or 9 months so that the students could then subscribe to it and get all the information you pushed out to them? Is that a feasible use of a blog?
Yeah, this is absolutely. Yeah. Now, good luck getting all the students to subscribe to the blog. Because most of them won't do it. Some of them will, but most of them won't. Okay. Could you do it? Yes. But the whole point is, like,